Okay, so have a handwritten, and thank you, Mary, for doing that. So, Councillor King, can you just repeat what your point of order was, please? It was on a misrepresentation basis, which was 3.13.7C, and what precisely was it again, please?
The 2012 to 2022 plan clearly states and has a graph. So this is like the public-friendly, easy-to-read
But what was your point
graph.
of order?
What I said was that's the rates.
You said that the Deputy Mayor misrepresented something. What was it that you said he misrepresented? I'm asking Councillor King, to be honest. Councillor McPherson, it's his point of order.
What my point of order was is that the Deputy Mayor said that was the effect that the 440 debt cap didn't apply.
Can I help your worship?
No, I've got the transcript. Okay, so...
He said it was a ratio, and yeah.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, your point of order is that he said the debt cap didn't apply. And that's not... And you're saying that misrepresents what was in the last 10-year plan. Have I got that right?
In the document, yeah. The document for the public, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to read what the Deputy Mayor actually said. A key point I want to make is we keep hearing this repeatedly, a 440 million cap. How was that figure ever devised? It was devised based on a percentage of revenue as a cap, 200% of revenue. And as we have accepted 200% cap, there is increased revenue, which gives us an ability to embrace the growth that is forced on us by market forces. So that's the context in which he made that statement. So in response, Councillor King, what the Deputy Mayor said is actually accurate. It is based on a debt to revenue percentage. He didn't actually say what you're saying he did say, so I'm not accepting your point of order. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Yes, Councillor Tooman.
Mr. Worship, I wish to speak for the motion. This morning here we've listened to a number of issues which have been raised which seem to focus mainly on the election which took place in October of 2013. I know at that stage, of course, the notice was out there that we were going to stick with a cap of 440,000 and a rate increase of 3.8%. And look, I fully agree with that. Nobody really likes to have to increase costs or rates on anybody within our community. But I think what's happened is we've really been caught. And I've listened over the period I've been on council of presentations from the Waikato University as to how the demographics and that are showing that Hamilton is a growth area. And I'm quite proud that there is a growth area here in Hamilton, because what's happening, of course, as we get the movement from the rural to the city, we have really, in a way, been caught short. In 4 years' time, we're going to have an expressway which will be 4 lanes of traffic coming into this city from Auckland. And when I read in the local Herald and that of the prices in Auckland, all I can imagine is that we will have many, many commuters who will actually travel on a daily basis from Hamilton to Auckland in order to work. I think that, well, as far as my impression of this goes is, will we be ready if we do not go ahead with this plan? And the answer I come up with is no. We have had a number of presentations here from staff, and in particular I've listened to Chris Allen, the General Manager of Infrastructure, and I think we will be left with egg on our face if when somebody turns the tap on there is no water which comes out of it, if their rubbish is not picked up, if when they flush the toilet nothing happens. Now I really think that we have to be prepared, and if we are not prepared, of course, I think that we will be the ones who are looking stupid. This morning we have heard that our names, if we vote for this, will be on a billboard. Well, as far as I'm concerned, so be it. It may well be good publicity if that is the case. Because my feedback, which I've picked up from the community out there, listening to them at the local community centres, is that just get on with it. That's what we actually elected you to do. And as far as I'm concerned, the increase in rates and that, we've only got to look back as we increased from, or we moved from land value through to capital value, and of course that's going to make a hell of a difference for some people within our community. So it's not all really about the increase in 3.8%. So if we are concerned as to what the voter is going to say in October of next year, well, my answer to that is I will take whatever the voter says, and so be it.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
I don't support the motion. I can't support the motion. For me, this is definitely a matter of integrity. The message that council put out was very, very clear, and I think it gave the public a calm, controlled message that they appreciated, and I think by supporting this you are undoing all that hard work.
Thank you. Any other for or against? Councillor Forsyth?
I've got nothing to say. I just want to refresh a couple of facts, I
Are
suppose.
you for or against?
Oh, sorry, I'm for the motion. Just to refresh a couple of facts, only a few. That Hamilton is only one of 3 growth areas in New Zealand, and like Councillor Turman, I actually think this is a good thing. I'd much rather be in a situation where we're looking to support a growing city and try to deal with the different issues that particular problem has, rather than being in a city that's dying and we're having a diminishing population that is trying to still deliver or keep infrastructure going. So Hamilton's one of a few growth cities, growth areas in the country. If I do take a quick moment to look back at what we achieved through our last financial plan, I think that we've done a good thing. We've tightened the belt, we've steered the ship in the right direction, and we've actually overperformed. We've produced and returned to balanced books 12 months earlier than we originally said we were going to do, 2016 instead of 2017. As a council, we now have a new 30-year long-term infrastructure plan that's required. It's probably something that we should have been doing all along as councils, but it's a formality now. We're required to look forward and plan for the future. And our future, and the bulk of this budget, is about providing infrastructure for our community. Our 10-year plan is about roads, water, libraries, playgrounds, keeping our stadia running. It's about us being smarter and more collaborative with how we look to fund those basic infrastructural requirements for our community. We're looking to partner with the Ministry of Education to plan and provide for a library and an indoor rec centre in the north of the city. And that's where much of our growth is centred. Even our local MPs, both National and Labour, have urged us to be less conservative about our 10-year plan. They want us to spend more money and deliver earlier. So this budget responds to conservative assumptions about projected growth, and we've heard in an earlier presentation by staff that even the assumptions that we made in this long-term plan were based on have changed. It's the nature of the world we live in. Change happens rapidly, and we need to be able to respond to that. Between 2006 and 2013, the previous two censuses showed that over 50% of New Zealand's growth took place in the Golden Triangle. And that's a really relevant thing for us to really be cognizant of and take heed of. Over 50% of the country's population growth took place between Hamilton, Auckland and Tauranga. So we need to be ready for that. As leaders of the city, we need to put our city in a position to respond and to support growth. This 10-year plan is conservative, but it's sensible, it's responsive, and it's eyes forward and looking into our future.
Okay, thank you. Any other for or against? Councillor Gallagher?
I acknowledge your ruling earlier talking about respect and relevancy, but as we're guided by history, that of course does show respect for the past and is incredibly relevant for today's motion. And 3 people were basically summoned to go and see, on behalf of this council, the then Minister of Local Government, Rodney Hyde, myself, who worshipped the Mayor and the then Chief Executive. And I respect in that meeting with Rodney Hyde and his officials, the 3 of us may have different or differing recollections. But certainly there was an expectation from the Minister at the time, in my view, that the city show some contrition to its ratepayers and residents by the means of the apology that was noted in the minutes that have been brought up this morning around the decision-making process that the V8 saga involved. And I'm going to focus very much on relevancy in the sense that when that apology was given, and when the Minister was reflecting on this council being sacked and a commissioner put in its place, and I acknowledge the local MPs, to the best of my knowledge, argued against that course of action, and I thank them for that. But in terms of current submissions from our MPs that says we are not, and I think the previous speaker mentioned this, we're not, we should do more, we should go faster, presumably we would borrow more in order to go faster. When you face ratepayers and explain to them that the debt of this city is going to go into the vicinity of $500 million or possibly more, when you explain to ratepayers that cumulatively over the next 10 years, the average rate increase will be 3.8%, but that doesn't mean 38%, that means 3.8% cumulative, then 3.8% on the next amount. And for those who are negatively impacted by the change to capital rating over 10 years, then of course that will be a lot more. I've got to tell you, your MPs will not be at your side. They will not be at your side with respect to them. We talk about the lessons of the V8s, and I think it's relevant. And one of the lessons I took in terms of this budget and of relevance to this long-term plan was the saga where council at the time was full of optimism. The economy was good, it was growing good, it was good. And we were engaged, and this council engaged for good reasons, from the heart, not necessarily with the head, a V8 project to stimulate economic growth, etc. And unfortunately, we witnessed a situation where some councillors congratulated themselves that their meetings only went for 20 minutes, or was it 5 minutes? I think the all-time record was 5 minutes. But I'll withdraw that because I don't want to delay this further, having that checked through the records. But that approach to governance led to $40 million debt for this city. You don't have to agree with Councillor King all the time, but let me publicly thank him for reintroducing democratic processes into this chamber. This is not just a mayoral advisory body, this is the democratically elected council of this city that is currently considering a long-term plan led by His Worship the Mayor in terms of her executive powers. And I want to say that I respect every one of you for your contribution today, and I respect that you will come to different conclusions to me. And no amount of correspondence with local media will change my mind from the fact that I believe all elected members are making a great contribution to the city, and in their own way, all elected members are working hard. And I look forward to us dealing with robust decisions and ideas rather than the people perhaps behind those ideas. This to me is about, do I support or oppose this LTP at the moment proposal? Do I support or oppose it? And on balance, I am not agreeing with it. If I lose the debate today, so be it. Because on balance, I think that in terms of that $500 million debt we are contemplating, with the 3.8% cumulative rate increase, is possibly a step too far. And the other thing I want to reflect on is during the V8s, do you
I'll move an
remember?
extension. Second.
Okay.
During the V8s, and this is relevant, do you remember the economic optimism on which those decisions were based? I am not anti-growth. I think someone else talked about sustainable growth. I am for sustainable growth, but my approach is one of caution. Because what I know is that the optimistic, rosy economic outlooks can change. So obviously I'm very focused on what we're doing over the next 3 years, because a new council in 3 years' time will have a new LTP. But please do not say that I'm somehow anti-optimism, anti-growth. I'm for cautious and sustainable growth and cutting our cloth. A few months ago, we referred to New Zealand as the rock star economy. The Reserve Bank said that our currency is overvalued, and I think I read somewhere this morning the share market has taken a slight decline. And that is because the economy around this world is very dynamic, and lest we forget, there's certain decision makers in Europe and Athens and Berlin and London and other places know all too well how dynamic economies are, and all too well how the unpredictable can happen. So that is why I can't support this particular 10-year long-term plan, because I think it makes some assumptions that are not cautious enough. Finally, and I want to stress this, I respect everyone coming to their own individual conclusion. And right from when we started this process in December, and remember we went and had a huddle in the old mayor's office, and we came out and we did some more work, and I think that's been very healthy, actually, very healthy. We may have come to different conclusions during that process. I want to stress that I commend each and every one of the elected members for their work and their robust viewpoints on this plan, and obviously I will accept the democratic outcome today.
Right, any other for or against? Okay, I'm going to speak for the motion. I did move it. I want to make some comments. We're elected to make decisions about today and the future. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget about the future. And in fact, we are legislatively required to turn our minds to the future. It's part of what it says in the Local Government Act, now and for the future. Number two, we do that through making decisions ourselves with the assistance of input from the community, business organisations, advocacy groups, MPs, all of those people. During this process, I've attended every public meeting and every engagement session on this draft budget. As well as that, as part of my job and all elected members' jobs, we go out into the community every day and listen to people, and people contact us, and we go and make speeches at groups and we hear what they've got to say. In my view, this is what they've said. Get on with it. And in fact, people at the engagement session asked us to move things forward. Not frivolous things, sensible things. Things that matter to communities, like, can I please have my park grass rather than hay paddock? That kind of stuff, sensible stuff. MPs said, get on with it and move stuff forward, because we are a growing city and we need to respond to that. The Chamber and the EMA, interest group organisations representing business, also said that. And in fact, the EMA was quite robust in their views on how the budget should be constructed, which I have to say surprised me a little bit, given they're normally fairly conservative. That's helped me to make a decision to know that this budget is right. I think it's easy to close your mind to change and to close your eyes to the evidence, because those are often things that we make assumptions and we're not always 100% sure whether they'll pan out. But we gather the best evidence we can at the time and use that as a basis. And that's what last year was all about, getting the most up-to-date evidence to base assumptions on how it might look in the next 3, 5, 10 years in this city. And that's what this budget's been based on as well. In 2009, when the council of that day made a 10-year plan, which was also a growth time, high times, heady times, they responded by having a debt that was going to go up to, what, nearly 800 million? But they ran a development contributions revenue line of over 20 million. Right? Yep. They embarked on the V8s. That was their response to growth. And based on the theory around some councillors' views on this budget today, we would still be in that 10-year plan today. But fortuitously, every 3 years, we get to look at it, to reassess the assumptions, to check the evidence, to look at the economy, to listen to the people, so that we can make adjustments that respond to our community today and for the future. And just as well we get to do that, right? Just as well. Otherwise we'd be running the 2009 one, sticking to that one. So I'm very pleased that we get every 3 years to review it. In fact, in most businesses you do that every year, and we do that with an annual plan, but that might be a little bit, less intense, should I say. So it is important. All businesses do that, and it's very important. Otherwise, you're not looking about the future, you're always in the past. I'm interested in making good decisions for the city based on the information I have and the views of the public that I understand them to be. And I'm confident, very confident about this decision. I want to correct just one matter. We don't have a debt for the V8s that's 40 million. The debt for the V8s was 22 million. The rest was funded through cash rates. So I thought it was important to correct that. The second matter is that...
Would you just repeat that? Was collected through capped rates?
Through cash.
Oh,
Rates
cash. Sorry.
It wasn't 40 million. It has never been 40 million, the debt component of the V8s. I just want to make a comment also about the debt to revenue ratio. In the 2012 plan...
I'll move an extension.
Thank you.
Second.
The debt to revenue ratio was going to be $1.80 for every 100 million of debt. It's now going to be $1.70. So that's good news as well. You see, you've got to look at these things carefully and read all the fine print carefully. The other thing is surplus, because in 2009 it was borrowing to operate. Good that we reviewed that one, isn't it? Good that we're doing that, otherwise we'd be still operating in overdraft and it would be worse Lucky we reviewed that 3 years ago and we're doing it again this 3 years because we're going to be into surplus. The way you run your home, money in, money out. Don't borrow for your lunch. So I think those are things are very important because people understand those things. Operate with the money that you have that's appropriate for the spend and make sure that you invest in the future. And I think we're very, very lucky to live in this city. We were given as an example in some of the councils when they were constructing their 10-year plans this time round about how we've managed to get a financial plan that responds to prudence as well as the future of our city. And I think we're pretty lucky. People like living here, so much so they keep coming here, and that's great. So I'm very confident this is the right budget for the right time. But it may be different in 2 or 3 years' time. And that's okay too, because you need to respond to today and the future and look at it all the time. Okay, so we're now going to...
Point of order,
What is your point of order, Councillor King?
3.13.7c.
Right, yep. What statement?
The Chair said during her speech that 2009 were heady times.
Where...
Heady were implying that things were going gung-ho, things were going great, and that we were spending up large. The economy was well into the GFC by 2009. The times weren't good, but the leadership of this council went ahead spending the money anyway, disregarding what was happening in the economy.
So, Councillor King, at the time that the budget was constructed, it was constructed in 2008 to start operation in 2009, and I'm basing my comments on the content and the narration in the 2009 10-year plan. The reality, I agree, it's probably something different. Yes, I would not disagree with you on that. My point was to illustrate 2009, those were the decisions that were made by this council, and we would still be using that 2009 plan today if we didn't review every 3 years. So I think I've answered your point of order. All right, so we're now going to go to the board to vote.
I'm trying.
That's carried, 7 votes for and 6
Okay,
against.
thank you. Thank you. We now have item 8, which is on page 38. Blair, if you just like, oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Your
Would you just
Worship,
like to
Deputy
just
Mayor and Councillors.
confirm if there's any matter you want to raise with us?
I just would like to thank Council for the process of approving the long-term plan, and now we are ready to set and assess the rates. What's in the past been termed striking the rates. Just a reminder, there is a transition process involved in this, and you'll see a diagram showing that on page 159 of volume 1, which is the revenue and funding policy. This sees rates being set at 90% of the land value and 10% of the capital value. It's the first stage of a 10-year transition in, to that new rating system.
Thank you.
So other than that, I'm very happy to take questions.
Okay, are there any questions on this report? Yes, Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, so in essence, this, my recommendation is basically, if I've got this right, a machinery recommendation that gives effect to the transition in the light of the LTP just concluded.
That's correct.
Right.
Right, any other questions on this? No? Okay, Councillor Mallard?
Just to be correct, this is the process whereby the rates we have set within the 10-year plan and or our annual plans, the mechanism for achieving it.
That's correct.
Okay, but this has nothing to do with the amount of rates we're collecting.
No, you've already set that with the budget.
Okay, I'll move the motion on page 38, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Anyone wish to speak for or against? Okay, we'll go to the board. then.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to
Just for
speak?
form's sake, I'm going to speak against the resolution. I'm opposed to the change to capital value, even in the transition period, so I'm just putting that on the record as the reason.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to vote. Okay, thank you.
Carried 11 votes for and 1 against, with
Councillor,
councillor
that's the,
heading away.
this is the end of the agenda, but as I said, we added an additional item with agreement from the council, item 9, update on Rivoli Theatre. I'm going to ask the general manager to come forward and give us that update.
Yeah. So approving it. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to remind councillors on the matter of the Rivoli land that is owned by council, the council resolved to sell the property at Rivoli Road back in September 2014. You also resolved that we would offer the property for sale privately to the lessee who is occupying the land, which is the Rivoli Theatre and Arts Incorporation. And we have since that time been in discussion with the Rivoli Theatre people for their plans to purchase it. They have advised us that they intend purchasing the land. We have taken a lot of time up until now with them while they have time to work out their plans, work out how they raise funds and so forth in order to effect the purchase. I checked their website just this morning and noticed that on the home page the trust is still stating that, which is consistent with their conversation with us, that they are determined to purchase the land. I also note on the website that they have so far raised 49% of the agreed purchase price for the land as well. Earlier this month we received a signed sale and purchase agreement from the Rivoli Theatre Trust, or the Rivoli Theatre organisation, and that was signed by them. We have not countersigned it as management of council. The new document that came to us had some additional clauses attached to it, and one clause in particular was a concern to us, which was seeking to extend the settlement of the purchase out until December 2016. However, as a condition of that, they wanted to have the right at any stage up until December 2016 to withdraw from the purchase. We have a concern that is a very long period of time. It's 26 months following your resolution to sell the property, and we are seeking to discuss that matter with the people at Rivoli in order to see if we can find what we believe, or I believe, to be a more sensible solution in terms of date. My intention, if we're unable to resolve that particular question, is actually to bring it back to this council to see how you feel about, settlement being pushed out 26 months from the date of your original resolution. And that's the status of where we're at this point in time.
So can you just clarify before I go to questions, what communications have you had with them to clarify the additional clauses in the sale and purchase agreement?
Well, they received an email from us once we just checked advice from our lawyers on the wording to make sure that our interpretation was correct, but we haven't had a chance to sit down with them and actually talk that matter through.
Why is that?
It's a timing and a matter of getting connected with people from the trust. I have to say the process has been quite drawn out because it has been taken a lot of time, in terms of one discussion, then going back to their board, another discussion with us, going back to their board and so forth. So it has been a drawn out affair.
Got you on this. So at this stage today, have you had discussions with them about those additional clauses?
We haven't had a response from them at this stage. We've sent them an email yesterday morning. I think they received one from us, and we haven't had a reply yet.
Okay, so that was the first time you communicated with them?
No, there had been some phone messages left previous to that a couple of weeks ago.
Phone messages, how many?
Yeah. Oh, look, I can't answer that. I'd have to check with the case officer, probably a couple, I imagine, but I'd have to check that. I don't know for certain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson?
Yes, so in the 25 days since the meeting where it was last discussed, and I believe that, which was also the morning, the day in which you had received the sale and purchase agreement with the clauses that were different from what you'd expected. The only thing that you're sure has happened in terms of communication is an email sent yesterday on the 24th day.
To them in terms of written correspondence, yes.
And that was before or after councillors, do you know, you may not know this, before or after councillors received an email from a representative of the trust questioning aspects of the process?
Yes, I have seen the emails you refer to. If you look at the timing of it, they were actually within a matter of minutes of each other, and certainly sent from our management team before we were even aware of that email to councillors.
So why did it take 24 days to make a formal response to something that wasn't what we needed to complete the sale?
Well, as I said, we have, we had been discussing that with them, or trying to discuss that with them, we, without trying to make excuses, we have a very, very busy team at the moment with a lot of other transactions underway at the moment, so there would be some slippage on that. But if you look at the timeframes leading between now, the September resolution last year and so forth, I can point to a lot of periods of time where there has been a lack of communication from both sides, where it has been quite tardy.
Okay, so you, at the start of your introduction, you talked about being aware of some statements and views on their website, the Waverley Theatre Trust's website, if that's its proper name, as a way of backing up your comment that they still supported well, they still intended to purchase, I think.
Yeah, well, look, it just reaffirms their statements to us that they still intend to purchase, and it reaffirms the fact that they sent a signed sale and purchase agreement, or on their part signed, but not on ours at the stage.
And so you would also be aware that they've actually got a different viewpoint, that they would prefer that if they made a submission to us right now, it would be to effectively reverse the original decision and to have the land gifted. You're aware that that's their position?
Oh yeah, absolutely aware of that position, and it's been a very public position that they've had right from the start, and they've made a number of comments to the media as well, and we're aware of that. But we're acting on the resolution of this council.
Yeah. I'm just wondering why in your verbal introduction you didn't sort of say, well, on the one hand they're saying this and on the other hand they're saying that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think to say that.
Okay, so the point is you are aware that that's their preference.
Correct.
And effectively they're going through the sale and purchase process because they have no choice at this point? Would that be a fair summation?
Yes, it would be a fair summation. The resolution from council is very clear on that. It's very clear on giving them first option as the existing leaseholder on the site. And the resolution is also very clear that if a sale and purchase agreement isn't forthcoming between ourselves and them, that we're instructed to take the property to open market for sale. So they're aware of the options that are out there.
And have we discussed with any other agencies or agents that potential open market process?
No, no one at all. To be clear, I mentioned earlier that if we weren't able to get a resolution on the current clauses that they put in the sale and purchase agreement, we would come back to council on this, despite the fact that you have resolved or instructed us to take the property to open market should an agreement not be struck with the Waverley Theatre Trust. I would still bring that back to council given the interest in this matter.
I think certainly a good idea. Just looking at those transcript of the meeting on the 5th of June, when a sale and purchase agreement signed by one party had come back to you, no one had looked at it before the meeting, because I'm looking at the answers here that were given by staff, your staff, to council, and it appears to be saying that everything's hunky-dory and we're going to get around to signing it, but in actual fact you're now telling us that wouldn't be something that you would sign.
I'm sorry, I can't recall seeing those meetings, and I wasn't part of the meeting itself, but certainly I think if I look at the minutes from that are actually recorded in today's agenda that related to Waverley under the questions on the LTP, it did signal that the that the matter was being processed and worked through with the parties. So
I can probably answer that in terms of that question, Councillor McPherson. So as per the minutes, Nick did state, as noted here, that he'd just received it on that date and hadn't had a look at it. So I think he was making his comments in that context.
I'm just looking at there's two comments here, the Strategic Property Manager Unit. This is on the front page of the document we were given earlier today by yourself. Thank you for delivering it. The Rivoli Theatre Board, right in the middle of the front page, Rivoli Theatre Board Management have returned a word unknown executed sale and purchase agreement. And then right down the bottom, you've got the GM Performance, Blair, saying, we have what would appear to be a complying offer. That seems like it's all over bar the signing.
And I'd just like to add the last comment that's subject to Nicholas's team doing some due diligence on as well. So it was never meant to provide the intention to council that the document had been reviewed. I think that's clear from this. He'd received it and he made it clear that he had looked at it, but he hadn't undertaken the full due diligence of it.
Well,
Okay, so
sorry, why would you say a complying offer if there was something that was so far beyond the...
Blair is
Blair, are you
I'm
here?
happy, yes.
It's just that it's Blair's
Sure.
right, because as I recall, the General Manager, Sean, wasn't actually there.
Yes.
So it was Nicholas. So, Blair? What?
yes,
I've just the question would be, why
Your
would you
board.
say it's not a complying offer when there's something in there which Sean is now telling us wouldn't enable him to sign it, would require it coming back to council in his opinion?
Look, I recall from the conversation that Nicholas and I had the words of the effect, it appears that we have a compliant offer, but it's still subject to the detailed review. He'd only just received it that morning, if I recall, so it was very fresh, and council were just wanting to get an update, and the update was that we had received an offer. At first glance, it appeared to be compliant, but it was subject to further detailed investigation. I guess that is what the General Manager is now giving you a further update on. So that was information at the time.
Would it be fair to say that the import of this discussion, which is transcribed here, stopped any further deliberations or discussions by council at that meeting?
Look, I think, Councillor McPherson, that's a pretty hard question to answer. My recollection was it arose because we were talking about a submission made by, was it Clarence or Rivoli?
I think Rivoli Theatre.
Rivoli Theatre, and then the question arises, well, where's that at? And yes, lo and behold, on that morning it had been received. So, I mean, I think you're trying to read into it stuff
Well,
that
no, I'm actually reading the words, Your Worship, and I
realise
wasn't
that.
there, so this is
Let me
all I've
just
got
finish.
to rely on.
Let me just finish. I think you're trying to read into it into the words something that probably isn't there. I can read the words for myself. They're clear. You've heard the explanation. Have you got any other questions?
Well, yes, Your Worship, it's one of you, because you're saying there at the end of the second page, okay, so there's nothing further to be done on that in relation to the sale and purchase agreement and the issue of the sale of the Rivoli. So you're saying that as the chair of the meeting to the Strategic Property Manager. So that closes off the discussion, does it not?
Well, I think, Councillor McPherson, this was on the Friday, am I right? Was it on the Thursday or the
Friday.
On the Friday. Look, the words are what they are. We had a discussion about it, and it was what it was. An agreement had been received. If you've got some specific questions to the General Manager on the update, ask them. Otherwise, don't labour the point.
Your Worship, I'm not labouring the point. I was quite happy talking with him. You started directing me elsewhere.
I directed you to the person who made the statement,
Well,
which was Blair Bocott.
and you made a statement, Your Worship.
Yeah. Yes,
So I'm
I've made a
going.
statement, that's right. So I've got Councillor Gallagher, questions?
Yes, and I'm happy to have leave for, I will clearly say from my individual recollection, I thought it was done and dusted, and I didn't want to talk about overturning a previous resolution because in the light of the advice, I didn't think I'd get numbers around the table for it. But the key thing is, as Councillor McPherson says, we have a returned executed sale and purchase
So
agreement.
what's the question, Councillor Gallagher?
I'm going to read the relevant statement that the question is about. I'm not entering into debate. I want to have leave to actually discuss this item once I've asked the questions.
Yep.
And it's simply this. Strategic Property Manager, page 2, correct. So effectively, if the sale and purchase agreement, and this is the key words for me hearing it, that's why I didn't decide to seek numbers to change. and on the face of it, it looks kosher. But if it falls within the envelope set by your previous resolution, then staff will simply execute it. Off we go. And this is the next question I want to ask. If it sits outside of, there are terms within it that sit outside that resolution, then obviously we'll report those back to you for your consideration. Now, the question is simply this. Initially, the Strategic Property Unit Manager said on the face of it, it looks okay. You're now telling me that on the face of it, when they had a second read, it did not look okay. And we're at the final stage of an LTP, and I was a councillor that was not going to pursue the issue of, you know, looking at that resolution again, full stop, because I thought it was just done and dusted. That was it. It was all over. When were you intending, or did you, forgive me, did you report back for our consideration? For clearly it was not okay. So when were you intending to report to us?
As I said earlier on, I was intending to report back to you only if we could not resolve directly with the Rivoli Theatre Trust the concerns that I had about them wanting to take the offer to us as being conditional, with the right for them to withdraw in December 2016 next year. I had a concern that that was a very, very long time frame with which we are being sort of held out to a possible result of a non-sale 26 months after your resolution. I wasn't going to come back to you until I'd had the discussion with the Rivoli Theatre people to see if we could resolve that particular concern that I have. The resolution to sell this property did not provide a time frame with which the sale was to be made. Normally we like to execute fairly quickly, but in the circumstances we have taken the liberty of giving the other party the time that they need to raise money and so forth, and we've been very respectful of that. However, to take it out to 26 months, still have the option for the sale agreement to fall over after 26 months was a long bow for me too. So I was hoping to resolve that, and if I couldn't resolve that, then I would come back to council to inform you and seek your guidance.
Do you see, or to the Chief Executive, if I was at a meeting as an elected member, and I have a different point of view to the majority of colleagues around what we should do with this property, and I hear the words, on the face of it looks okay, but if the terms within it that sit outside the resolution, then we'll report that back to you. So I still go around several days and days after the meeting, think it was all done and dusted. Do you think it would be legitimate in my discussions with the community, and then I start to talk to people in the community from Rivoli, and they said, no, it's not done and dusted. Do you think it would have been more helpful that we would have been given an update? Because I was labouring on an assumption that basically we were just into a final formality stage.
Look, I'm sorry that I wasn't here when that was discussed, but I think the question that I would have is, what would I be updating you on without having had the chance to have the discussion with the Rivoli Theatre people to see if we can resolve that particular issue? I can't come back to council. I mean, we do a lot of transactions on your behalf, and coming back to council every time we have a discussion with someone and which presents another issue, I can't come back just because of that issue every time. I want to resolve the issues until such a point in time that I do need to come back.
But there was advice given that it was done and dusted.
I don't think that was said, done and dusted.
Well, on the face of it, it looks okay. So with respect, and I totally respect in most property transactions, but this is one of high public interest and high public debate. Even the Deputy Mayor has alluded to that in the broader debate the other day. Surely.
Can I comment on that aspect? It was very clear, and from reading the whole thing from end to end, that Nicholas only received that report, the sale agreement that day, and he did mention the fact that it was still subject to due diligence, so a full due diligence, and he did use words like on the face of it, and it appears. So the key part here is due diligence, that we were going to do a proper due diligence. Like any contract we bring before council or we sign under delegation, we make sure that meets the requirements of the resolution. I don't think anything in these transcript implies that it was a done and dusted deal.
I think what I'd like to suggest as a member of the board is that if there'd been an update, that might have been helpful, that it wasn't done and dusted and there was still further work. That would have been helpful. What I'm now seeking is through her wish, I think, to our City Secretary around the standing orders process, because I still want an opportunity, because this is not done and dusted, to test the will of the council, the elected members, around whether we actually review that particular resolution. And as the Deputy Mayor has reported as saying in the local paper, because I couldn't be there for that section of the meeting the other day, when we concluded very positively the Clarence Street Theatre process, there's been, which I totally agree with, allusions made to the fact that it would appear that the Riverlea community, theatre community, has been treated very, very differently from the Meteor theatre community and the Clarence Street community. What's the process which we would need to adopt to actually at least
So
put that
Councillor
back on the
Gallagher,
table?
Can I just keep that as a holding point?
Yeah,
Because I want to get
sure.
through the questions
Right.
first. Can you just respond, though, to a comment that Councillor Gallagher has made about treating differently? Because I think there seems to be some misinformation floating around about land and buildings. Can you just...
Yes, Your Worship. That statement about being treated differently or unfairly compared to Clarence Street or the Media Theatre by the people from Riverlea is made quite often and has been a very vocal point that they've made. We need to remember, and it was in the original paper that supported the resolution for sale, that the Riverlea Theatre building theatre was actually gifted to that trust or to that organisation a number of years ago. So they had already received the gift of the theatre pretty much along the same lines, as far as I can tell. It was a long time ago and I wasn't here. That has more recently been done for the Meteor and for the Clarence Street Theatre. In the case of the Meteor and the Clarence Street Theatre, we still own the land.
Well,
and that's the position with Riverlea.
but
And
if
so
you
just to
well,
clarify that, just so we're clear here, so the report that originally came to the council on which it made a decision to sell the land had all that set out in it.
Yes, it
And I think the issue that's now preoccupying councillors' minds is whether that next step should be gone through. So we'll get to that point. Okay, Deputy Mayor, you had some questions.
Yes, my question is quite similar to Councillor Gallagher, and I think Councillor...
If it's been asked already, you don't need to ask it. If it's a different question...
Well, I want to add just an element to the question for Sean. So I'm looking for the way forward, not backwards. Is there any way for us to reconsider the point that Councillor Gallagher made in light of the decisions we've made with Clarence Street just relatively a few days ago? And could we have potentially an outcome where we continue to own the land so that all three theatre groups are in an identical position, which is the point I made the other day when we did the Clarence Street deal. So what's the way forward?
So Deputy Mayor, I mean, that's asking, can the council change a resolution that it has made before? And the answer to that is, yes, it can. So you know the answer to that.
Could we
That's
have
a
advice on the
procedural
process
So
through
we go-
you, Your
Yes,
Worship?
we're going to get that advice,
you.
but I just want to make sure that all the questions on the substantive matter are dealt with, and then we'll move to process and procedure. Councillor Mallett?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Sean. It seems to me, and I just want to be absolutely clear, that in fact the gifting of the building for the Meteor, which was done 2 years ago or so,
A year and a half ago.
year and a half ago, and the gifting of the Clarence Street Theatre, which we approved just recently, very recently, well, it's in the
occurred-
process.
It's
sorry.
today.
Today, okay, today. In actual fact, just means the Clarence and Meteor have finally caught up to where Riverlea has been for quite some time. And I'm getting a no.
Sorry.
So I just want that clear.
It's a question to the General Manager, is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding it's consistent.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking for a bit of a subjective information from you now. We're now getting, a lot of councillors are getting stuff. We're being treated unfairly compared to the other theatres. So the Riverlea people feel that what's happened for Clarence and Meteor has somehow been an advantage that they've been given, the Clarence and Meteor over the Riverlea. Is there any grounds, can you see any grounds? Is there something we don't know that they know that would give rise to them
I'm not
raising
sure,
that point?
Councillor Mallard, I'm not sure that there's anything they know that we don't know on this. When we went through the theatres review and we looked at the options to rationalise our theatre operations and so forth, we even tried to get Riverlea and the people at the Meteor together, and Riverlea and the Hamilton Operatic together. We tried to encourage the groups to see if there was some way they could cohabitate to help themselves out. The thing to know about Riverlea that, as a reminder, is that their building that we gifted them many years ago is in a state where at some stage they are going to have to make a serious decision soon as to whether or not to renew that building and whether or not they have to raise a substantial amount of money to rebuild on the site. Now, there is an advantage to them if they have tenure on the land. If they have no tenure on the land, they have no security upon which to build. And so I do have a question mark as to, how beneficial it is. And I think it is beneficial for them to actually own the land so they can do what they ultimately hope to do on the site. And so from my personal view, they should have a strong case to actually want to own the land so they can do stuff with it.
Thank you, but that, in terms of equity, because the question that we're being asked to, well, the question that's been thrown at us from people outside, the community and the theatre community, particularly the Riverlea people, is in terms of equity, in terms of all being treated even-handedly, Clarence and Meteor have only just caught up to Riverlea in terms of being gifted a building that the council had paid for and built at various times to the occupants. The land on none of these properties has been gifted to the occupant. So in a crude way, they're all now, if this goes through, they'll all be on the same,
yes,
pretty much the same ground.
Yes,
except that you said that you think that maybe the Riverlea building may be a little rougher than some of the others.
Look, I'm sorry, General Manager, it's asking the same question going round and round and round. So can you just clearly confirm the status of each of the three theatres today?
The status of each of the three theatres, that they buildings and facilities within, fixtures within them and so forth, have been gifted to the relevant theatre group, and we own the land that they sit on.
And that is the current position with Riverlea?
That is the current position.
If the resolution is actioned by a sale and purchase agreement, Riverlea will be different?
Correct.
Right.
I should add, though, and remind you that the land that Riverlea sits on, they use a part of the land and not all of the land. So there's quite a bit of unused land that goes with it, unlike the Clarence Street and the Meteor.
Is that the parking?
No, it's the green paddock next door.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Pascoe, you've got questions?
Is there an ability to subdivide or to do something with the title of that land?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And that ability was discussed at length when we discussed this resolution last year in Council, and that is actually an opportunity once again for Riverlea Theatre to do that subdivision if they are to buy this land.
Subdivide the part that they're not using and sell it?
Correct.
So, Councillor Pascoe, you...
Yes, my question is, does the Meteor and will the Clarence Street Theatre have a similar lease arrangement on the land that currently Riverlea has on their land? And if so, will that also potentially discount the market value of the land should we have a similar situation going forward with Meteor and Clarence wishing to buy the land on which their buildings sit?
Any existing rights will always have an impact on the valuation of the land. In the case of the Meteor, they have a lease arrangement, the Riverlea Theatre, a lease arrangement, which effectively takes them through to 2032, if you include a renewal option that they have. So that leasehold is protected. Even if we were to sell the land privately, that's a protected lease and so forth. So I'd just also like to remind you that the sale of the Riverlea land was actually foreshadowed by the last long-term plan before I arrived, and it was added to the list of land that was included in the LTP for potential exit.
Yeah, sorry, my question though is, does the Meteor and will Clarence Street have a similar long-term lease?
We don't have a lease document as such. The deed of gift essentially gives them a right to occupy and operate in the building, conditional upon them achieving certain key performance indicators and so forth. So it's a slightly different arrangement to what Riverlea
And then
has.
if they don't meet those, then
If they don't
it comes
meet
back
those-
to the council, does it?
If they don't meet those KPIs, or if they have any financial challenges and so forth, it comes back to council.
Okay. All right, so Councillor Gallagher, did you have some other questions?
Yes, questions in terms of the previous LTP, but that was a list of potential land for assets, which
Oh, yes, that's
and the division on that was clear. I think we had the Mill Street Reserve as well in that list. No one's going to say we're going to cut those trees down and sell the Mill Street Reserve,
Sure.
make that. Secondly, if we look at, say, a sports club, where the Hockey Association on Innes Common, so you've got a sports club where they've built their own premises. I understand. What's the financial sort of model that applies there? And I'm trying to relate whether we have a consistency between, say, our sporting organisations that erect a facility and do fundraising and financial deal, obviously, presumably borrow money from banks to a degree.
Look, I can't really speak authoritatively with regards to sports groups and so forth, other than to say that the difference with the Rivoli Theatre land, to my understanding of where most sports groups are occupying land, is that it's a freehold title. It's not a reserve land or parks space or anything like that. So it's a freehold title, and so that's where the land tenure is quite different.
So basically, you put the building in and you separate that from the reserve.
Well, it's not a reserve now at all.
No, if you have a building on a park, right, you've got the reserve round it.
Oh, I think the land remains reserve.
You see what I'm trying to get? I'm trying to get the building and the reserve. The fact is, we still own the land. Is that not right?
The current arrangement with sports clubs is they have a lease.
Yep.
So they actually occupy the land. Generally, most of them build their own facilities. If they become defunct or whatever, then in our lease agreements, then the council ends up owning the asset which is built on the land. You're correct, Councillor Gallagher, if council decided that they wanted to, if that situation occurred and wanted to dispose of the built asset, our options are to either lease that out to another community-minded organisation which meets the Reserves Act requirements, or that we go through a Reserves Act revocation of the classification of that land under the Reserves Act, and then if that went through the whole public process, then we'd be in a position where we could sell that because it would be freehold land.
But would banks presume it's a bit like building a house on a 99-year-old lease for 99 years? Banks do lend, not necessarily as favourable, one would assume. So what I'm trying to tease out here is sports clubs and others would potentially get funding and finance when they're putting their clubhouse or a facility on land that we still own and we do a lease deal.
Look, I guess they can. It's just how robust that security is from a bank's point of view, and certainly land itself is usually the security that banks are looking for.
Presumably, if you had a scenario where, for example, Rivoli, we gave them a 50, 60-year lease, if, say, they then had a development project, but the bank said to them, actually, we really want you to own your land outright because of security and that wouldn't prevent them or any organisation coming back to council to negotiate a buyout of a lease?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this?
Yeah.
So, yes, sorry.
Two questions. One, on just following that one up, is it not correct, and it might have to be the other general manager will answer this, that on occasions when that exact situation has come, people want to secure a bank loan or another loan for a development on council land, we have in fact signed letters of intent or longevity or details of lease, things like that, effectively in support of an applicant in that sort of situation?
Look, I'm not aware directly. I've never been involved in anything like that. I mean, if we were asked, we would always provide a bank with the exact details of what the tenure of the land was, the ownership and the nature of the occupation, but I've never come across that.
And I can confirm that's what we actually do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened before my time here.
I was just trying to get a general picture, that's all, nothing specific.
So generally we just give factual information to the banks, and quite often the sports club, if they went down that track, would ask us for that. My experience is that it can be problematic for them to get funding from a bank because they don't own the land, and then it's problematic about security of the loan over an asset which is built on public land. Normally, my understanding is the bank would look for another guarantor.
Right, any other questions?
Sorry, that was the first of the questions. Second one, when you were being asked by Councillor Mallet about I think it was a question he asked you, essentially the status of the Clarence Street, the Meteor have been brought into line, I think he was saying, with Riverley, and you said, I think more or less, it was
Yeah,
your
look,
answer. Sorry, my question though, which would be, is did not, in the case of both Meteor and Clarence, weren't there other considerations provided by council, including Meteor's case, cash amounts, Clarence for the first year, things like that weren't offered to Riverley?
Look, I actually would have to investigate the actual detail of what the gifting arrangement was with Riverley. I couldn't answer whether they were gifted any money or not as a part of that, so I'm unable to.
No, I'm asking now. Sorry, more specifically about the other two.
Oh yes, no, the other two theatres, as a part of the arrangement, were given a first year operational grant.
Thanks.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, the question was what's the process to, if the council wants to look at a previous resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Council has received this as a late item onto their agenda today under Standing Orders 357 when you confirm the agenda. So in terms of your action today, the only action Council can take on this matter today is to refer the item to a subsequent meeting. And following on from that, in terms of revoking an earlier resolution, Council could do that at a subsequent meeting via a report from the Chief Executive or Sean at a future meeting. The other way that Council can return to a previous resolution is by way of a notice of motion signed by 5 members.
Okay, so in answer to Councillor Gallagher's question then, the council could resolve today to receive a report from the General Manager on the status and update of the Riverley Theatre at the next council meeting, which would be July, and carry on with your negotiations or whatever until then. Is that, they could do that?
Correct, Your Worship.
All right, so does that clarify your question?
So just so basically, as I understand it, there could be a resolution that basically, which I'm happy to move, that the report be received and that this matter be referred to the council meeting on X date.
The July council meeting.
All right?
The July council meeting.
Yeah, and that's not judging whatever the outcome may be at that time, but it's procedurally the process. We obviously, and I get we can't do anything here, but then that would be when any substantive discussion.
Just a point of order, sorry, Martin.
It's not a point of order, I don't think, it's a process question.
Process.
Martin said that the report be received. What report have we received?
This verbal,
this thing here.
Well, the verbal.
Oh, okay.
The verbal update from staff, I assume from the CEO and staff, be received. The transcript be noted, and that this matter. And this is where I need some help here. This matter be further considered at the council meeting of.
Could I ask the Councillor Gallagher that also include a comparison with the arrangements with the Meteor and Clarence theatres, that the report include that, and that there be no further action taken on completing the sale of the Riverley land in the meantime?
I don't think you can include that because that is effectively nullifying that previous resolution, but as what Sean has said, he will not progress with going to the market in such time until he brings the current one back anyway. So we've effectively had that assertion from Sean previously anyway.
Yeah,
so I'm asking just then about the
comparison.
The comparison so that we can compare.
Sorry, General Manager, you've got some comments?
Oh, look, effectively, I'm sure this discussion that you're having now will cause the Riverley Theatre people to withdraw from the discussion with us on that sale and purchase agreement in any case, so it'll be delayed no matter what.
Okay, so Councillor Gallagher, what is the resolution or the motion you wish to put?
Well, and I'd like, if I may, from the Chief Executive and from City Secretary, Democracy Manager, that the verbal report from the Chief Executive and staff and the GM be from the Chief Executive and the GMB received, and that the transcript and that the table transcript be noted. That this matter be subsequently referred to the council meeting of the, please give me the date.
30th
of July, Councillor.
30 July, and that staff be asked to prepare a comparative report detailing the agreements reached with the Meteor and the Clarence Street. And I'm just, theatre groups, or I assume there would be theatre groups, and as compared to the current sale and purchase offer to the Riverlea Theatre Group. And I'm sorry, I'm thinking this off the top of my head, whether you want to type that up, put that up on the board. And I'm very open to better wording, Mr. Chief Executive. I think this is purely a procedural. It's not judging any outcome. It's purely a, if council is so minded, this is purely to vote on a process.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Yeah, in your hands.
And
Could you put it on the board when you...
yeah, it's just I want to be clear that we've got the correct wording in terms of process. And if the Democracy Manager wants to provide any assistance for the Chief Executive, I'm very open to that.
I can't read shorthand at the moment. I have to wait till she types it.
Sorry. But I just, you know, as I said, please feel free. I'm very open to, as a mover, and I hope the seconder will agree, that we're very open to just receiving advice from you around this is purely a process motion.
Yeah, great, eh? Yeah. Yeah, but is it today?
Yeah, today.
So where was it? Oh, Soccer Club.
Is it the intent of what you're after, Councillor Gallagher?
Whether you want to do the relevant report, or because we're assuming a report, and that the staff report.
Yep.
That the staff report, because obviously that leaves it open, Mr. Chief Executive, for you to other background. It's not that the staff report include. and this matter be referred and the staff report include a comparison. So that leaves it open as to what else you may want to.
Right, does that represent what you wish?
Yes, it is.
Deputy Mayor,
Is that agreeable to the?
Councillor Mallon?
Speaking.
No, sorry,
Oh,
Councillor
sorry.
Mallon's got a question.
Martin, that the council receives the verbal report from the city on the Riverlea Theatre. I mean, that's
Yes.
looking at the minutes.
Yeah, right.
In a week's time, you won't know what. Oh, okay, sorry, Riverlea appears in the second paragraph.
I will have some context around this, councillor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it just needs to have Riverlea up that first.
Perhaps on the current state of the Riverlea Theatre sale or something like that, on the current state of the Riverlea Theatre negotiations, on the
I think
current
we
state.
get the gist, Jeff.
Yeah, I think we're there.
You're complicating things, councillor Gallagher.
Right, is there any other,
Just relax.
is that correct? You're happy with the wording? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, all right. Anyone wish to speak for or against, councillor?
This is purely a procedural motion, so I'm not going to actually speak about the broader issue. That's not appropriate. This is purely a decision you make today as to whether or not, in the light of all the information that you were in receipt of, whether there is merit in the council meeting of the 30th of July to reconsider this particular issue in the light of the information you've received today. You may still, in the end, reach the same conclusion, or you may not. So that's all this is attempting to do. This is just giving effect to a process in the light of the information we've are in receipt of.
Okay, any others for or against?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to support as seconder, that the debate is at the next month after the report. So this is really a technical matter to move through rather than debate.
Yes, councillor Paulside?
I don't see that any new information has been added in my mind, so I'm going to be voting against the motion.
Anyone else? Councillor McPherson?
Briefly. Look, I think the issue has got quite confusing about the debate hasn't necessarily helped either, I might add. Quite confusing about which theatres got what and whether how much is comparable and how much is not. And I would actually hope that when the staff report comes, if this resolution is passed, that it's done a bit of a table, so the table for dummies, so we can actually see, compare what the land was worth, what the cash grants were worth, because there are some, what work needed doing on the buildings. I remember we did some on the Meteor, or we're going to pay for some on the Meteor, because to get it up to scratch, some issues like that. So there's an advantage there that maybe another one didn't have. I'd like to be able to say, have we really done an apples for apples exercise, and is it fair or not? And until I see that comparison, I couldn't give anyone in the public a good answer on that. And that's why I'd like the report. It sounds like it's not going to, whether or not we have this report, the sale isn't going to happen before the next meeting anyway, from what the General Manager and the Chief Executive are saying. So let's get the report, and it's not going to hurt us to see that information and then make a more informed decision.
Right, any others for or against? No? Okay, we're going to vote on the board.
Carried, 11, 4 and 2 again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, councillors, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.